Dear colleagues, a few remarks will be made by Ambassador of Ukraine.
Good afternoon. Few remarks after Ambassador Churkin, just to have you alternatives to form your own judgment what's going on around different things. The first issue is the killing of a Russian journalist today. So just to tell you that the president he was the first who expressed his condolences to the families, and he instructed to provide the thorough investigation on the circumstances which brought to these deaths, and to inform him and OSCE and as well as UN monitoring grouping in Ukraine. Some details, what is known about these killings. So this morning, the group of terrorists, they attacked the Ukrainian law enforcement troops near Luhansk. They replied, and this fighting, 10 terrorists were killed, many of them injured, and among them Russian journalists. Only in the hospital it was known that Igor Kornelyuk, he was the Russian journalist. It is not clear if he entered Ukraine legally or not, but he did not follow the instructions to all the journalists to be accredited and to have insignia that they are journalists. As well, they were recommended to have the self-protection equipment like casks, like armored vests, and so on. They did not follow that, so they performed on their own risks. It's a sorrow that they appeared in that way in Ukraine, that they were within the terrorists there, but they performed their job in the way they wanted. It's a pity that we lost again a group of the journalists who were involved in that violations. Just to make you clear where we are with all these investigations, what we know about them. So the rest of the questions on your side. Just to inform you that today we addressed the Secretariat of Security Council to take part in the Security Council meeting on the next report of the monitoring group on the human rights in Ukraine to be held this Thursday. What format could be, we don't know, it's up to the Security Council members to decide. We are open to any format because human rights issues they are to be openly discussed. That's why we are open to any format. We know the content of this report. We are ready to comment. The report is satisfactory, despite the fact that a lot of the recommendations and critics addressed to the government. But it is a report of respective groups, and we satisfied that the Secretary General found it possible to continue the work of the monitoring groups. We keep telling that the major problem today in the East, the activity of the terrorist groups which are being fed from the Russian territory by army, by money, by people. We keep demanding from Russian Federation to stop supporting openly these illegal armed groups in Ukraine, to stop penetration of the armed people from their territory. Recently, with the tanks and a sophisticated weaponry, which brought to the kill of 49 Ukrainian soldiers and the plane. So this is the major problem we are dealing with now, and we need the decision of Russian Federation to stop feeding terrorism in this part, please.
Ambassador, you say you know the content of the new human rights report. From your reading of the report, what are the important points in your view?
This is a package because a part of this report dedicated to Crimea. So recently, the Undersecretary Valeria Amos, she informed about the growing number of the people who are leaving Crimea. So It is not said in the report clearly, but it is stressed that they are leaving Crimea because unbearable conditions in terms of their ethnicity treatment, in terms of their cultural treatment, and in terms of their language treatment. So we demand from temporary occupying authorities just to perform in a due way and not to harm the rights of the people living in Crimea. The second part concerns the eastern Ukraine. So there is a number of issues explaining the human rights violations. Majority of them they explained by the fact that they are becoming the hostages of the bandits, of the terrorists, because terrorists are pushing them as a life shield, and terrorists are occupying their residential premises, and that's why they are becoming the victims of that. So journalists, big list of the journalists who were injured or were killed. So because of that situation, Ambassador Churkin told about the attitude to the journalists. What he said, it was not about the Ukrainian army who treated journalists in that way he explained. It was absolutely different. It was a terrorist group who kept them, who put them in an unbearable condition, so they violated their rights. So this is what we have, and recommendations to the government what to do. The government is performing in that way that where we have the control over the cities, there is no problems with the supply of the water, with whatever. Where the terrorists still controlling the cities, there are 5-6 cities, so they are controlling the water supply, electricity, and so on. So we try to take, first of all, children out from these zones. They are in Odessa and near-lying zones, in the recreation zones for children. So, but still there is a danger for the people in that particular cities. Their rights are violated because the terrorists they seize the building of a national bank. They seize the buildings of treasury. We can't provide regularly the payment for social benefits and pensions. So a big list of things, and naturally the encouragement to the government and the president to continue his roadmap with the inclusive dialogue with the region. So he stated openly that he is ready for that, and we launched this dialogue with those cities who are liberated from the terrorists. Thank you.
Do you have any further information about the bombing of the administration building in Luhansk? I know I'd asked about you before, and at that time the OSCE hadn't. Now their website is back up, and they seem to indicate that it came from the air. So what have you learned?
True.
Thanks.
So we keep telling the same. So no weaponry was used against this building. The Ministry of Defense confirming that. And if you look at the Facebook of one of the leaders of the so-called defense ministry, who is the Russian citizen, Igor Strelkov, recently, and the last conversation between him and some people in Russia, explaining if this kind of the bomb was revealed, and he confirmed no. So it means that we keep the investigation because it's very difficult to provide it in the area which is under control of the terrorists. But what we know from the internal investigation in the Ministry of Defense that it was not the Ukrainian side who did all this, created these problems.
On the journalist question, it seems like I agree. I mean, both journalists on both sides have kidnapped journalists, but even beyond this artillery killing, it seems like from the same company, journalists were detained and then ultimately released. The same thing happened to the Life News one. Is this being done by government forces, by pro-government forces? Who's detaining them?
The government forces, when we are speaking about those who were arrested, recently from Zvezda and so on. So it's their obligation to arrest, to stop any people in the zone in the zone where the military base are. And so it happened with the journalists from Zvezda. It happened also because you know what Zvezda is. This is the official newspaper of the Ministry of Defense, as it was formerly of Russia Federation, as it was in the Soviet Union, and now all of them, they are on the military service. One of them, of these journalists, had his documents certifying that he is lieutenant colonel. So they were kept just to investigate what we were doing and what kind of information they are collecting, being in the double capacity as journalists and as the military persons. So all of them, they were released, but after the investigation. So very interesting confession of one of them, what they were doing there, and what kind of instructions they got from the Moscow. It's worth listening on YouTube. It is broadly shown. Yeah. So.
Is there any thought of a ceasefire? I mean, I'd seen something where, I don't know if it was Mr. President Poroshenko or council there, had said once the border is secure, if the border can become secure, then a ceasefire would be offered. Is that okay?
His intention was to protect the borders because there is a permanent supply of the weaponry and a heavy weaponry and a big amount of the armed people who were coming. So to control the border first. If we have controlled the border, we can control the situation, and then we can stop the fire and to turn to the dialogue. This is what he stated at the last meeting of our Defense Security Council.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you.